Hello, I'm Chris Flisher, and welcome to Turning of the Wheel, an intelligent, lively discussion on astrology, art, and adventure. Timing is everything, and as the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed. Join me as I explore the current planetary alignments and offer insights for coping with change. Educational, informative, enlightening, the Turning of the Wheel is a welcome pause in your daily swirl of constant change. Through intelligent discourse, inspired guests, and educational segments, I will help to enlighten your knowledge of astrology and guide you to accept change as the great wheel of life turns. Call in with your questions and speak with some of the greatest visionaries in the time-tested practice of astrology. Turning of the Wheel, Astrology, Art, and Adventure with Chris Flisher each week on Turning of the Wheel podcast. Hello and welcome to Turning of the Wheel. My name is Chris Flisher. As you know, this is a show about astrology. As the great wheel turns, we are best prepared and we are best informed. That's the idea behind Turning of the Wheel. And of course, it also references back to that Buddhist philosophy of the great wheel of life. And so that's what I think astrology is very much like that. We got a great guest on coming up soon. I just want to remind you about my newsletter, which goes out every Sunday afternoon at 1:30. In there, I do a mundane overview of what's going on in the cosmos for the week to come, and then I break it out into the individual signs. I encourage you to read your sun sign as well as your rising sign if you know it. If you don't know your rising sign, there's a rising sign calculator on my website, turningofthewheel.com or chrisflisher.com. You can get there both ways. And you just enter your birth date, place, and time, and you get your rising sign. Then you read those two together, you're going to get far more accuracy for what's going on in your world to come. It's very insightful for those of you who don't know. So a couple of years ago, I was out in California at a astrology conference, as I tend to do, and I met this wonderful woman named Arielle Guttman, and she is the woman behind the Venus Star Point. And Venus Star Point is an interesting idea about it traces the planet Venus, and of course, as we know, Venus is coming up into a retrograde period. So what better person to have on the show than Arielle herself to speak about the Venus? And so welcome to Turning of the Wheel, Arielle. It's always great to have you on.
Thank you, Chris. I love our conversations on your show. You have a great show, and thank you for asking me.
Good. So we have a interesting time coming up. We have our Venus retrograde coming up on March the 4th through the 15th, and of course we have the shadow periods on either end of that. But it does mean that Aries gets a big boost and big long time visit with Venus this year around, doesn't it?
Yes, and this is a more interesting. You know, every Venus retrograde they're timed to 1.6 years apart. It's 584 days cycle, Earth days. 584 days is the cycle of Venus, and 365 is our Earth-Sun cycle. And so that equals, no matter how you cut it, it divides down to 1.6 or 0.6. So it's a very interesting number. It's a phi ratio. And what it does is every 5 retrogrades, it will make an 8-year period, 5 of them, the full 5 Venus star. So it's not just the retrograde of Venus in Aries that we're dealing with. It's really going to create the next star point, because the star points are connected to the point at which Venus and the Sun meet. And halfway through the retrograde cycle of every Venus retrograde, the Sun and Venus meet at the point at which I call the kiss of Venus, or the point at which the star point is created, which in fact gives us a kind of an Aries coloring working behind the scenes until the next one comes along, or until the next star point comes along. The next will be a superior conjunction. It won't be a retrograde Venus, but it will be in January of 2018. But really, from now, March of 2017 until January of 2018, we will be in this sort of sub-Aries phase. Mm-hmm. So we will be feeling a lot of Aries energy all around us, wherever we look.
Which, of course, points to new beginnings. It points to sort of a fresh initiative starting over, and we see a lot of that underway right now, which is very appropriate as far as whatever the new beginnings are. Of course, every day is a new beginning, but we see the larger theme of transition at this point, which would be indicative of an Aries sort of visit.
Aries is about birth. It's about the seed coming, shooting up from the ground. We think of it as the first day of spring. We think of the little shoots in the ground coming up from under where they've been hibernating all winter. It's really about just the struggle to grow and to step out and to do something. And I'm calling it the year of passionate activism because of the Aries star point and also the fact that it's a morning star. It will be every time we have an inferior conjunction of Venus and the Sun, what that produces the morning star, meaning that Venus will. It's been in the evening sky, beautiful, in the bright and beautiful in this after the setting sun, but now you'll all have to get up pretty early, starting around the end of March to see Venus, but you will see her in the morning sky before about an hour, I'd say about a half hour to 45 minutes before sunrise is the best time to view her.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So the star point will happen around March 24th, I think, is when the two meet precisely. Yeah, and then the next star point would be 72 degrees beyond that, and then 72 degrees beyond that, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then they're not exact 72 degrees. It's an imperfect star, but what it does have is the 5 points of this star are pretty much they're almost 72 degrees, but the next, I think for your listeners, the best thing to know is that this star point happens at 5 degrees Aries. And the one that's going to happen 4 more years from now is at 6 degrees Aries when it comes back to Aries. So anybody with 5 to 6 degrees Aries in their chart, anything prominent there, you are going to be feeling the energy of this Venus star in a very positive, proactive, passionate way in terms of getting going. And if for instance, if your sun is there, it's shining on your sun right now. So get out there. If it's something else there, maybe it's your Saturn there. Maybe you have to take more responsibility now or something. But whatever, it's highlighting a certain area of your chart.
And is the same rule applied to the squares and the trines of that 5 degree point?
They've been proving to be working.
In which way are they challenges?
Yeah.
Not
everyone will have the conjunction. So let's say your sun is 5 degrees Cancer or Capricorn. I think it will still. Yeah, you can still pretty much consider that it's going to be activating whatever that planet is in your chart that it's activating. It's going to be activating it because this Venus star is so finely synchronized. The mechanism of it's like a finely tuned, highly tuned Swiss clock.
I am always amazed by it. This is one of the things why I love astrology so much. Is this precision that is just mathematically right on the money.
Mm-hmm. And when you start breaking it down, when you look at all the things, all the different ways this is timed, it's almost like a clock that's like a computer, because our regular clocks they're one dimensional. The hands move around a circular wheel, but they just keep repeating the same numbers over and over again, and they don't have a dimension to them. This Venus clock is doing so many things at one time. It's not just measuring hours and minutes and seconds. It's measuring the whole 5-pointed star, the one from one point to the next, the one from the whole cycle, the one from the 9 months, there's so many different things involved that it's unbelievable that it keeps going back to the same points and hitting the same points over and over, and then just slightly moving by 1 degree each time forward. It's just really amazing to keep in tune with it and to keep tracking it and watching it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And so, what's interesting about it, we mentioned a lot of things. We know what Aries means symbolically and archetypally. And with a retrograde there, how do you think that measures out? Is it a diminished kind of passion because it is in retrograde, or is it just a different quality of a Venus influence?
I have a theory about especially the Venus retrograde, because it averages about 40 days, 40,
Mm-hmm.
41 days.
Yeah,
And
40.
so many religious practices have a 40-day period in them where somebody is practicing something, some kind of practice
Yeah, it's
is.
very real. It's very common. Yeah.
And I really feel like it was based on originally following that they knew that Venus was in this retrograde for 40 days, and that during this period it was not so much of a putting your energy out in a very dynamic, extroverted way, but it was more like pulling in. And I call it a life review. I think these 40-day periods of the Venus retrograde are serious life reviews. They're not like Mercury. I wouldn't say don't sign contracts, don't do this, don't do that, be careful of this. It's not a be careful of anything. It's more like a life review involving the major value systems of your life. In fact, people can sometimes make very big purchases during a Venus retrograde because they really feel as if this is something that they've been waiting for a really, really long time. And now it's happening, especially if that degree is hitting your chart right now. You might
Yeah.
make a big move.
Yeah, it's very good. I think it's very good for, like you say, it's sort of a culmination, especially of perhaps a long-held dream or a long-held goal that you've been working towards. And if it happens to land at that point in time, it's a great time to sort of recognize that. It seems like it has a great deal of passion about it and stuff. So I think it works really well in that regard.
Mm-hmm. This one's a little more complicated in that when you break down this Venus retrograde cycle, there's like 7 or 8 different phases of it, because on January 30th, it went into its shadow in Pisces. It connected, direct. It was direct and it went to its shadow in Pisces. And then on February 4th, it entered Aries. So it changed signs, but it's still direct. That will give us a whole month from February 4th to March 4th of Venus direct in Aries. But then on March 4th, Venus changes directions. It stays in Aries, but it changes directions and goes retrograde. So it's
Back
sort of
into Pisces. Back into Pisces.
No, not into Pisces, but it changes. It's still in Aries, but it's retrograde.
Right,
So
but it does retrograde eventually back into Pisces.
Yeah, it will eventually go back. So you may feel, people may feel like they're making a lot of momentum now, especially from February 4th to March 4th. Venus is in Aries, it's direct. Okay, it's not moving as fast as it normally moves, but it's moving forward. And people will be beginning all kinds of things, or maybe even committing to all kinds of things, either relationships or groups or purchases or certain things to do with their values. But then on March 4th, when it actually goes retrograde, from that point until its direct point on April 15th, there's that looking at that more closely, really carefully examining what it is in your life. And I think it has more to do with relationships, because it's Venus.
Yeah, that would make sense. I think of relationships, I think of beauty. I think in Aries, it's kind of a time to, I think your description of a long-term wait. If you've been with the same person for quite some time, you may decide that now the time has finally come to commit. Might be a good idea. That's sort of an initiatory kind of action. I think all those things are important. I think of it's the opportunity to begin that is so appealing.
Here's what I will say about that. It's the relationships, yes, but not every relationship. I think there are only certain relationships we have in life with people that that have a financial component to it or an economic component to it. And because Venus is the lady of our second universal houses and our seventh universal houses, both Taurus and Libra, I really think that if you're in a financial partnership with somebody, this could be business. This could be your business partner. This could be your big client. I've had my clients call me during Venus retrogrades and say, my biggest client just let let me go or something, and they're in a crisis because now, what are they going to do? This was their major bread and butter or something like that. So it's like you're looking at, and this is where people really get off balance. You're in relationship with somebody important in your life, and there is a financial component to it or a commitment, let's say, and one person or the other isn't keeping up with their part of the bargain, their part of the commitment. And so then it starts feeling very imbalanced. It starts feeling like a quincunx instead of, this equal, on the scales, is everything balanced? So this is where I feel that most people are going to recognize the stress of what's going on in their life right now.
Recognize the stress of what's going on in life. And I guess that depends upon the house in their particular charts and how their charts or how their planets are aspecting to Venus as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
it's interesting. I think that because we are given the sort of the political climate that we're in, and the fact that we are sort of in this what we call the 100-day honeymoon period, this sort of falls in this within this realm. This might be a time for us to recognize a new beginning and perhaps just see how things go. I guess that's what we could say. We have obviously gotten off to a very bumpy start, but I think that's just naivete on some people's minds because of inexperience in a position such as this. The government moves much differently than the business world does, and it's far slower. So it kind of looks like a beginning, a transition of time and place there as an initiatory thing. And it may not be as bad as we all envision, perhaps, or maybe some of us envision. It might be. We don't know quite what to expect about that, but it does have that initiatory feel to it.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Chris. I think people are jumping to conclusions way too soon. This is another Aries kind of tendency. Mars is in
Impulsivity.
Aries right now, and we have Venus in Aries, and so yeah, we and Uranus is in Aries, and I would say what's happening. I mean, we're not really on the subject of that, but rather than looking at an individual person, even the president, I would say that the transits affecting the national chart right now are even more profound in terms of it doesn't really matter who would have become president. I mean,
Right.
for certain issues it does, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in the bigger picture, this was still destined to be an outrageous time of disruption and revolution and feeling of disconnect from what's going on there, and people really needing to get motivated. So I want to go back to the passionate activism. I was just telling someone this morning earlier in a session that who's all fired up to do something, and I said, well, it's not what you should, because they were like, well, I don't know if I should do this or if I should do that. Well, passionate activism and the year of Venus in Aries as a morning star isn't about what we should do. It's knowing deep within the fibers of our being that this is what I want to do. This is where I am, what I'm really passionate about, and this is where I'm going to jump in. So until that happens for you, maybe it's best to just be with this retrograde and let it kind of form, because there will be plenty of opportunities to jump in and do something.
Yeah,
And
I think that's accurate. And I think we want to be cautious about, being, we don't want to, we want to sort of contain the Aries impulse. I think because Aries can be very impulsive and acting, very rashly. And that's something I think we could probably do well by pausing.
well, and choosing your battles.
Yeah, exactly.
It's sort of like you don't want to jump in and do something, to make a big noise over something that's really rather small when that energy could be put forth to something much larger. So we have to kind of look at that. And I'm not saying anything is small. Every effort, no matter how small it is, makes progress, does something. But so it is. It's the year of passionate activism. It's also the year of the rooster, the fire rooster.
Right.
It's also the year of it's a one, I think, universally year. Is that right?
Yes, you're right. Yep, yep.
Yeah, a 1, which is a beginning. It's an Aries star point year. It's a morning star, which has more of the warrior kind of nature to it. So when you put all of these things together, it is like people are going to want to jump up, and whether it's taking action in that way or just, as you say, beginning something, feeling like they can really dive in and be motivated to begin something new in their life that they've been dreaming about for a long time. That's another way to look
Yeah,
at
I
this.
like the idea of the passionate activism, though, too, because I think it gives us an opportunity to sort of wield some power and feel as if we have some role in how things unfold. I think that's an important task for us all to have. It makes you feel like, I mean, we are a democracy, and I think it's important for people to be engaged and involved and express themselves in fruitful, meaningful ways. I think that's the key there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. So I want to give you 3 dates to be aware of, and it's not exactly the retrograde and the direct. It's more connected to the star point dates.
Okay.
But Venus's direct actually passes the degree of 5 Aries on February 10th, and that's also the day
The
of
eclipse.
a lunar eclipse.
Right.
So and that lunar eclipse happens at a currently functioning degree in the Venus star clock of this 8-year period, because it's at 22 Leo.
Yeah.
So that is that's the Leo degree on the clock of Venus that's happening. So it's going to be a double Venus day and a moon day as well. It's a big day. So that's number 1. And then there's number 2, the actual star point, which is March 25th. And the final is May 7th. The March 25th is the one that I would say the wedding day has arrived. What are you committing to, or who and why? But the February 10th date might be showing up at the place where the marriage is going to happen and getting the hall all set up and getting all the arrangements made and landing there and just kind of getting ready for it. But also during Venus retrogrades, people do, if we consider this a marriage, like us, the American people that have just engaged with this marriage to a new leader, a new president, whatever, I think a lot of marriages and a lot of relationships go through this contractual review process during the Venus retrograde. So this is exactly the time period when we are saying, even people who voted in favor of the president, what did we do? Are we having second thoughts about this? What did we commit to and why? And so I think it is the testing period. It's part of the 100-day, yes, but it's also, with the Venus retrograde, I think things will be coming to us in a much more pronounced way during this time.
Interesting. You think it'll be more? I mean, I always tend to think of Venus as being a benevolent planet. Does it rear its ugly head at some point in time? And does that I think probably the best way you described it is what I think sits with me best, is the sort of this reconsideration. Is we have a certain, where, I always use the RE prefix whenever I'm thinking about any retrograde, regardless of what planet that may be, and applying it that way. So I think you would take the RE and you say, well, maybe we are reconsidering. We're revisiting this relationship. We're,
renegotiating our contract.
Yeah, renegotiating our contract, exactly. And what does that look like? And,
Yeah.
I think that's an important distinction to be made. And very apropos. I think that is really where we are coming down at this point in time. We really are in that spot, it seems like.
Like, not only what did we commit to here, but is that person following through? Like I said, Venus a lot has to do, we have to always go back to contractual relationships involving money. So if there were promises made to certain people, or who's really in control here? Do we know if he's really run by the Russians? Do we really know if he's run by the Republicans? Do we really know that, in some ways he is his own person and doesn't want to be run by anybody else? And so what his commitment, first of all and foremost, who is his commitment to? Who's he working for?
Mm-hmm.
Is he really working for the American people, or is he like in service to someone else? Number one. And secondly, does he go back on some of his promises or contractual agreements, whether they were written or unwritten? So I think that's what we're kind of waiting to see, and I think it will be unfolding in this time period between February 10th and May 7th.
Yeah, I think so too. It's interesting. Obviously the house where anyone's Venus is located, or the house that the Venus is transiting in an individual's chart, will obviously bear quite a bit on the type of activity people might be facing in those situations.
Right.
And I think it's important that we maybe go through those over the course of, maybe we'll take a break and we'll go through those when we come back, and go through the individual houses just to give a flavor for people, because many people may know where Aries is in their chart. They may know that it's in their 10th house. They may know that it's in their 2nd or 4th, wherever, and they may help them make a determination about how to treat the retrograde. I think that would be important to do that perhaps when we return. And we might as well take a break right now. Arielle, what's your website so people can find out while we're thinking about it?
Oh, it's SophiaVenus.com, all one word, and Sophia is PH.
Okay.
Sophia,
very good.
Venus.com, yes.
And your book is called The Venus Star Points, right? And it is
Venus Star Rising is the print book, and the Venus Star Point is the ebook.
Mm-hmm. And those are both available on your website?
Yes, they are.
Okay, good. Okay, so check out your website, SophiaVenus.com, correct?
Yes,
Yep.
And I would also like to put in a little, I know you are based in the East Coast, even though your listeners are all over the world, but I am coming to the East Coast. Venus is going to be arriving in the East Coast to do several programs there during this retrograde period.
So, what a great time. So Arielle will be in Boston, for those of you who belong to the local NCGR, and of course Arielle is going to be up and down the East Coast during that time, so it'd be important to check out. You have your schedule posted somewhere?
I do, on that same website.
All right, good. So we'll take a quick break. We'll be back in a few minutes, and in the meantime you can check out SophiaVenus.com and also check out Arielle's books and materials as well, and we'll be back in about 3 minutes. Okay, hang in there.
What is your destiny? Where are you going? What is your real purpose? Do you know? Do you want to know? Of course you do. It's your duty to yourself. We are all here for a reason, and we all have great potential. Discover all of this and more with a professional astrology reading. My name is Chris Flisher, and I can help you. Discover your strengths and work on your weaknesses, and live your life to its fullest capacity. Based on your birthday, birthplace, and birth time, an authentic astrology reading will allow you to live your life to the fullest and reveal your true purpose. Only real astrology can give you real information. It is your destiny, and it is your path. Write me at chris@chrisflisher.com and book a reading today, or call me at 978-393-1036. That's 978-393-1036. www.chrisflisher.com.
Astrology is the science of spirit, and it can serve as an invaluable aid in making the difficult choices in life and seeking truth in all the directions we choose. It holds the potential to allow each of us to evolve to our highest potential. It is the logic of the universe, the code of existence, and the pathway to true wisdom. It is our duty to draw from it the instructions for our lives and to live them to our fullest potential. As the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed.
As the world shrinks and our barriers come down, diverse cultures are striving for harmony, balance, and peace. To ease the transition, we need to expand with color, light, and tolerance. Now, you can become a global citizen and embrace the color and clear spirit with the divine artwork of the mandala. Mandalas are a timeless artistic offering for creating unity, harmony, and peace. My name is Chris Flisher, and I've spent years creating mandalas, and they are now available online at www.turningofthewheel.com. Come and experience the world of color, form, and function with t-shirts, coffee mugs, note cards, and limited edition prints. These vibrant, lively paintings and products express optimism, oneness, and spiritual balance for all who use them. www.turningofthewheel.com. That's www.turningofthewheel.com. And enter a world of possibility and color.
Okay, welcome back to Turning of the Wheel. My guest today is Arielle Guttman. She is an astrologer out of the West Coast, and her specialty is Venus. And since we're entering into a Venus retrograde period, I thought the timing was perfect to speak about her knowledge of Venus and where the chart, your particular chart, those of you who are listening, it's important to know where Venus is not only natally, but also where it is by transit, which means where it is coming to now. So we all have an Aries piece of our pie someplace, and that's where Venus is going to be moving through. So I asked Arielle if she could go through each of the individual houses with the idea that Venus will be transiting there, so that those of you who know your charts can go look at your chart and say, okay, it's going to be in my 9th house or whatever, and you can figure out where you'll feel the influence. This is how to be best prepared using astrology. So, Arielle, why don't you start off with house number 1 and go through those?
Okay. Well, house number 1 is the one that's associated with Aries. It's all about me, myself, and I.
Right.
It's our relationship to ourselves, and it's how we project ourselves out. It's how we are seen to others, and it's how we interact, and it's the energy from which behind which is our fire and passion, and how we introduce ourselves to the world. And so it's definitely a house of beginnings. If this Venus star point is falling in your first house, it's a new makeover time for you. Consider getting a makeover, or it doesn't have to be connected with beauty, but a life makeover. It can be something to do with just starting, getting involved. It's fire. It's Aries. It's cardinal. It's getting something started with passion.
Yeah, and I think that could extend to anything that you're sort of doing to improve your individual life, whether that be, obviously if we get into the 4th house, that's going to be more about family and house. But if you are in a spot yourself where you're thinking about changing something about the way you look, perhaps a new, just a new sort of you, it's a great time for that.
Yeah. It's okay if you get purple hair this year or something.
Exactly right. Yeah.
It's or rainbow colored hair or whatever. Wherever your values lie, it's okay to just kind of dress the part, look the part, come out. And by the way, Aries is, when I'm saying coming out, I'm not really. The Aries star point is very much connected all the years it's been in Aries with the gay rights movement and same-sex marriage legislation and all this activism around gay rights and all of this. It's been a very distinctly Aries star point, because every 4 years the star point comes back to Aries, and they run for 100 years, these cycles. Aries is going a little bit longer. It's actually running for 108 years. From the time it started in 1929, it will last until 2037, but 2038. So it will go about 108 years. It will hit Aries, the star point that is, and the retrogrades and so forth, 27 times in Aries during this whole 108-year period. We're nearing the end of it. We're in the last 20 years of it. It ends in 2037, the Aries points. We're at 2017. So we're in the last phase of it. You could say we're beyond 4th quarter, maybe heading more into balsamic phase of it. So whatever Aries initiated in its beginning is coming now. It's coming to a close. It's a cycle that's coming to a close.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So then we move on to the 2nd house. Obviously, we all love the 2nd house. People seem to love the idea of money.
Yeah.
And investments, and that might indicate opening up a new bank account, a new investment of some sort, a business venture.
Investing with the heart, putting your money where your values are. A lot of people are moving their money out of big corporations, out of big banks, trying to support local businesses, trying to make more affordable, sustainable businesses and so forth. But yeah, Taurus is you're going to review your finances. If this Venus star point in Aries is affecting your second house, you are definitely going to be looking at your economic situation and what is either working or not working. And it ties very much into that theme I was talking about earlier of if you are in any kind of a partnership or financial agreement or obligation with somebody contractually, and it is not feeling balanced right now, it's feeling imbalanced, this is where the changes are going to occur for you.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting and I think it's also about resources as well, so it's a good time for people to consider, are they spending their natural resources wisely? People may be more concerned nowadays with, sort of starting home gardens and trying to be more self-sufficient, I think, and that's also a good thing. I think there's a lot of, possibilities with that as far as, how things work. I think it's just a good time to consider all that.
That's a great interpretation of the Aries star point in the second house, starting a home garden. Yeah, or something like that, because
Yeah.
it is the earth of Taurus in the second house. It wants substance. It doesn't want just ideas and talk and whatnot. It really wants something real, something solid.
Yeah, and I think that makes perfect sense because you'd want to have, it would be more of a time, especially for resources. I mean, I think that, and of course, being the Taurus relationship to the Earth, those kinds of things, I think people should start thinking outside of the box in situations like this. Like it might be time to get some chickens. It might be time to, any
Yeah.
number of things like that. Sort of return to the Earth of sorts.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then move on to the second house.
The third.
A third house, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, Gemini ruled. So universally Gemini ruled. Now, of course, it's going to be different for everybody listening, whatever you have in your third house, depending on where your wheel starts. But this is the universal third house. So it's an air. It's like an air house or a principle of air. It's a principle of ideas and exchange. And this is where do we start a dialogue? Where do we start a discussion? How do we begin to talk to people that maybe don't think the same way as we do? Because I will say for myself, but I think a lot of people find ourselves in this predicament, is we've been preaching to the choir for a long, long time.
I know.
And we all agree, and we are passionate and we are excited when we preach to the choir because we know we have an audience that agrees with us. But how do we start to look at where the other side is coming from and either listen, just focus on listening, or just decide, where am I conflicted about? Am I on this side? Am I on that side? Gemini has a lot of ideas. It's about communication. This is where, if we're looking at the Aries principle of passionate activism, this is where we start a discussion group or a radio program or a podcast or some kind of way in which we get people, but in a loving way, talking to each other, listening.
Right, it's personal expression, I think, more than anything else. Personal expression, however that may be, whether that means, that can be art, it can be words, all forms of outward bound sort of information.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
And then we move into the fourth?
Yeah, which is the universal house of Cancer. So we're dealing with a cardinal sign, so it's starting, again, Aries and Cancer. But it's water, so we're dealing with people's feelings. We're dealing with if you've got the Aries star point hitting your fourth house, it's about your home, reviewing, where do I live? Who do I live with? Mm-hmm. Are these people supporting me? Am I supporting them? How are we together in this community? It may not be just in your house, but it could be in your neighborhood or your wider community. Is it time for me to think about living somewhere else now because I'm surrounded by people who, are waving a different flag than I'm waving?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not necessarily that you move on that day per se, but you might the topic of the conversation may come to the table, and therefore you start to formulate a plan. It's sort of the initiating point. So you may be happy where you are living, and all of a sudden this influence comes along. You start thinking about the idea. Well, what would we do if we moved someplace else? How might that look? And you sort of lay the groundwork, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It would be a very good time to invest Venus values into land or property or a place, just a little plot of land where I can grow my own vegetables or have chickens or whatever. It could very well be something like that.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. It makes perfect sense to me as well. And I think that's a great spot. And the house is always good. And that can also mean, when it comes to the house, that can mean redecorating, putting on additions, beautifying it, maybe putting down some new floors or new tiles or anything along those lines that have to do with that sort of that structure. It may be a good time to reconnect with relatives you haven't spoken with, or, I think it's all those things fit in there.
Yes. And I think that being grounded is like, I can't overstate the importance of really coming from a grounding centered place right now, because in the midst of all the other aspects that are flying out there in fire right now, and Uranus and Jupiter in opposition, and Eris and Saturn and Sag and everything, we really need some grounding. So this idea of getting kind of clear and grounded is really good with the Venus star point in your fourth house.
Yeah, no, I think so. Yeah, that is good. And then we move into the fifth house from there.
Well, that's the house of Leo, universally Leo. So we're back to the fire principle. Now we have fire on fire. Mm-hmm. So we have double fire. So this is really about self-expression, but at a more advanced degree, let's say, than the first house was with Aries, where you were just starting to, peek out of the door and get out there. Leo is now, let's consolidate our energy. Let's put something together. Let's make a community theater or something artistic, something creative, something. I see that with children and creativity. The fifth house. It's the expression of the human. I think Leo is the expression of the human being in their finest form. What is it you have to show us? It's like, remember when we all were in school and we had show and tell? Did we feel happy and proud about what we were showing and sharing, or did we feel embarrassed about it? So if this is in Leo, it's sort of like, okay, put it out there. It's really time to reveal yourself in a bigger way.
And I think that's appropriate too. I think that's a very Venus certainly supports the arts. I think it's a very strong. If a person has a nicely aspected Venus in their natal chart, they may have a strong propensity towards the arts, and of course it has that whole aesthetic realm. So I think that if your Venus is in your fifth house and you're having the Venus retrograde there, it could be a great time to get something very beautifully created. So, move on to the sixth house. We have, of course, the house of health and service.
Yeah, and Aries and Virgo are connected on the Venus star. The Virgo star point actually feeds Aries. It's part of the mechanism. It's like the parent to the Aries star. So in this case, if it's in your sixth house where Virgo is kind of, implied, I would say that it is kind of like your parent saying to you, the voice. Your parent might be deceased, or your mentor, or your person who helped get you going. You might be hearing their voice on how to take care of yourself better, how to deal with your health, how to deal with the things that need repairs, whether it's in your body or whether it's in your home, or but it is a commitment to service. And I think where people in Aries, if they have Aries in the sixth house to begin with, they're usually people who are very passionate about their service, but they're not always good at following through, and they're not always good at working for others and taking orders from others. And so what you need with the Aries in the sixth house is to recognize yourself as an entrepreneur, or somebody that can, get your own thing going, a vehicle of service that works for you, that you can provide for others at your kind of on your own rhythm.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes, exactly. And it might be a good time to, I think the sixth house also pertains to the idea of personal well-being, both physical and mental. So it might be a good time to consider, with summer not far off, you might want to get into better shape, a new exercise routine, a new diet, something like that as well. Yeah. And what about the seventh? Move on into the seventh.
Well, this is another Venus house. So this is now, for this, if you've got Aries in the seventh, it means you're probably Libra rising, or you might even have Virgo rising, but you have the flipped wheel. And so you're integrating a lot of different opposites along the way to begin with. But the Aries point in the Libra house is saying that, how do I find myself in relationship with others? Am I too dependent? Am I not reliable enough? Am I there for them? Am I there too much? This is a situation where you're actually dealing with people, because Aries, when they find themselves, Aries in the seventh house is very, they need people in their life. They really have a strong relationship with others. It's like they need, not necessarily always a partner, but often they do. They are partner oriented. But sometimes they need many more than a partner. They need many people in their life to satisfy different parts of themselves that they can connect with. So here again, I would say partnering up with, joining forces with people that can help you accomplish your goals in a way that Aries maybe can't do on their own, that they just need that other person to help them. Let's say I'm the creative person and you're the one with the financial background or marketing expertise, or someone else has that, but the other person has the technical experience and can get you online or whatever.
Yeah, sort of joining forces.
Joining forces with others that really kind of help you step into that role of passionate activism.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. That brings us up to the eighth house again, which involves money and outside resources typically. And how do you see the Venus star point working in that house?
Well, that's the Scorpio house, and so we're back to water again. We're back to the deep well of feelings, and it is a financial house, very definitely so. So we are looking at, let's say, joint assets. What do we have in joint resources with other people? Where are we invested? What is coming to us? What is going out? I would be looking at the books, and just like the second house, second and eighth, I think, are very much connected in the way in which you would say what's coming in, what's going out, and where do I feel the need to trim off some excesses, or, kind of just hold back for a little bit before being impulsive. Because Aries in the eighth house might be impulsively, like in the second, somebody who wants to commit to something financially or commit resources to something, to somebody else. But this is all in review right now.
And I think it also, especially coming from the outside, it might involve inheritances. It might involve taking care of an elderly relative. It often applies to large institutions as well. So you might see that coming to fruition there, and you might see those sorts of things there. As we move to the ninth house, we see Venus, a star point in the ninth house. If it occurs in your ninth house?
Yeah. Before we go to the ninth, I just want one more thing about the eighth. The part that people don't recognize about the eighth is it's truly the shamanic house. I think Scorpio and the eighth house are very much the place in which we would find ourselves being deeply psychically connected, or psychologically connected, or shamanically connected in terms of energy, and really going down to the heart and soul of things, soul work, and so forth. So I think Aries, if the Aries star point is falling in that house for you in this cycle, this particular time period, I would deepen that as well.
Yeah, that's a good place to think of.
Deepen my relationship with that part of myself. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we move into the ninth?
Yeah, ninth. Well, there's fire again, Sagittarius. It's like, what's your vision? Bigger vision, higher vision. Now Saturn's in Sagittarius all year. So we do have a vision, right? But there may be times when it feels like it's blocked or it's slowed down or whatever. But if you've got Aries in the ninth, I would say broadening this Venus star point this year, broaden your horizons somehow. Tap into higher education, learn a new language, travel to a foreign country, reach out to someone from other countries, reach out to immigrants in this country. Put yourself in a bigger kind of place as far as representative as maybe someone that has world citizenship rather than just, okay, don't define yourself by I'm part of this group,
Right.
and that's it.
Right. I've always tried to adopt that view of being a world citizen. I think we really are. We're citizens of the same planet. That's what we are. We all have that in common. So it seems ridiculous to be fighting so much. But anyway,
Exactly.
let's go on to the 10th house, the house of career and occupation.
Right. It is the profession. It's the Capricorn house. It's how well am I maintaining that structure? And it's also the house of authority. So if Venus retrograde and Aries is falling in your 10th house this year, you are an authority figure. You are a spokesperson. You have the ability to have something to say, to lead people. There is a leadership component in Aries that a lot of people don't recognize, but most Aries people and Aries star point people that I've examined, they're not leaders that elect themselves, but they just are doing what they're doing, and other people want to follow them.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Because they're inspired by them,
Yeah, totally makes sense. And I think that, Aries being a leader is where you would see leadership qualities come to light. It might be if you have your Venus retrograde occurring in your 10th house, it might be a good time to consider perhaps looking at other jobs if you're unhappy. It might be a time when you could consider perhaps branching out on your own if you've got that independent streak, as you said. So those are a lot of great potential there, especially with regard to career, because that's always an exciting time for people.
Exactly. Right. And so if you've been thinking for a long time about quitting your job, but you've been afraid to, it could happen for you during this Venus retrograde cycle. You'll either get your notice or you will give notice, because it's, and not necessarily everybody that has this will, but in some ways I think you'll find the structure around your profession or your job changing in some way. But I think it's to learn something new and to try something new. It is Aries again. So you may feel just in the 10th house, you may feel so worn out, like I've been doing this for 28 years or whatever it is. I feel like I need something different. And so that's going to be the inspiration or the point at which, the passionate activism occurs, moving you into something new. If I'm not growing anymore, and I think this is the overall theme for the Venus Aries star point, It's like if I'm not growing and if I'm not expanding somehow, like that springtime energy of Aries that just wants to just keep growing and doesn't want any stops or it just wants to keep moving. If I'm not growing there, then something's got to be done about it.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, because it has to, and it's about, one thing we don't want to be is we don't want to be stagnant. We're multifaceted individuals, and we need to sort of stretch that sometimes in new areas. And there's something very exciting about a new job. If you change yourself, you're sort of reinventing yourself.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Right. Mm-hmm. Okay, the 11th. So the 11th is Aquarius house, and, it has a lot to do. I think actually it has a lot to do with your network, your social network, whether it's, sitting on Facebook all day or whether it's your community center or however it is, your group of friends, the people you stay in touch with. But it is the people, it's how we partner together, how we build communities. So Aries star point in the 11th, I think the activism for Aries this year in the 11th is really touching base with your community and seeing, well, where's the focus? Where's everybody going? You might look around, though, and you might see it's scattered. Every single person I know in my community seems to be a little bit off the wall, a little bit crazy about what's going on and how move forward, how to connect with the energy and take control. Let's say take control of the energy and do something. But Aquarius, being the underlying house there, Aries and Aquarius have a star point relationship because a lot of us were born in our generation anyway with the Aries or Aquarius star points. And even if we weren't that primary star point, it's on one of our 5 arms
Right.
of our stars. So these are important. This is the way you connect with your people, your network, and how you put your ideas into a bigger container.
And those points are important because you'd look at the natal chart, find your Venus, and then go 72 degrees around until you have what's called a pentagon in your chart. And those points where they land and those degrees are significant points for the individual, for anybody.
Yes, and I will share with you when we're done with this, where we have one more house to go, Pisces, the 12th house, and I will share with you the exact degrees for your listeners, because they're not exact 72 degrees, but I will share the degrees so you can look for those.
Okay.
So let's do Pisces. That's the 12th house. If you have Aries in your 12th house, it's got a Pisces undertone. We're back to water. We're back to feeling. So sometimes that's the behind the scenes activism. It's like Pisces, the 12th house, has a very not so out front way about them. It's the power from behind the throne or whatever. It's always has a very strong spiritual component to it. And it always feels like it's coming from something that is a deep, deep belief system. So whatever the deep belief system is, this is the Aries year, the year of active, passionate activism, is about your deep beliefs and how to act on them.
Good. Perfect. Yeah.
Now, it's also the opposite of the 6th house. So we have to take care of our emotional health and it's not just physical health. We have to take care of our psychological and emotional health too in the 12th house. So be aware of your energy and how much you have and whether you're exerting too much or not enough. And, again, it's kind of a balancer. I see Venus as more of a balancer. But let me give you the 5 points of the star before we run out of time here.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So the Aries degrees are between 5 and 6 degrees Aries. That's really where it's hitting strong this year. Then next year it will move into 18 to 19 degrees of Capricorn. And following that, it will come to about 3 degrees of Scorpio. And following that, it will be 22 degrees of Leo. And following that, it will be 13 degrees. It's between 13 and 16 degrees of Gemini.
The significance of the 22 Leo, does that tie in with the eclipse coming up?
Yes, very much so. As I was saying, that's another degree on the Venus clock. I call it the Venus clock of our current time. So in an 8-year period, and we can always center ourselves with where we are now and look back 4 years and look ahead 4 years. So the star points of the last 4 years and the next 4 years are really this Venus clock that we're involved in right now. So all of those degrees, if you have any of those degrees active, maybe it's not the Aries star point, but maybe you have 19 or 18 Capricorn strongly positioned in your chart, you'll have both the Pluto transit and the Venus star transit showing up at the same time.
Yeah, very, very powerful.
Very powerful. So the people that have that degree are really, stepping up for big, big roles in leadership right now, whether it's in your family, your community, or in the country or the world.
22 degrees of any fixed sign, too, for that matter, right?
There we go with 22 Leo again and 2 to 3 Scorpio. Yeah, all of these points on the Venus star are really putting you in touch with the Venus of the current time, which puts you in sync, kind of. It puts that planet of yours or that point of yours in sync with the current, star clock. Do you have an example, a personal example of yours to share with that?
No, I'm okay with that. I mean, I just thought it would be interesting to know that the 22 degree that you're talking about, 22 degrees Leo, is also the spot for the eclipse coming up, which I thought
Very much so. Very much so.
Very. So it's
yeah.
got a certain amount of resonance to it. It's got more. It has. I think it's got a deeper meaning. I think is a good.
Got
way
a
to look.
Venus component to it.
Yeah. And I think oftentimes people, and I'm curious what your take is when people ask me, and when I'm doing consultations and stuff about, is there a negative side to Venus? And I don't know so much if there's a negative side, so much as there is maybe a diffused element to it. Maybe not as prominent as you might expect. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Okay, so there's not a negative side to any planets as far as I'm concerned, but there is a way that it works well, and every planet has a way in which it doesn't work so well. It has its shadow. I will call it more of a shadow kind of thing. And in the myths of Venus, because she was the one who wanted to be the most beautiful and the most, all of that, mirror, mirror on the wall, it's that whole myth of that. And when the mirror comes back and says, no, it's not you anymore, it's someone else. So the shadow of Venus is, can be ugly. It can be jealousy. It can be vengeful. It can be, all of those things. If I didn't get what I wanted, or I didn't get the person I wanted, or the person I wanted betrayed me, or, promised me this and didn't deliver. So there can be, that kind, but it's not, that's not the way that Venus normally goes. I would say if you unblock that dark energy or that fear behind it, what you get is love. Mm-hmm. If you go in the direction of love, it's all good. If you go in the direction of fear, it's all bad.
Right. I think that's a safe way to phrase it as well. So, well, we have run out of time, as I knew we would. The conversation always goes quickly with you, but I'd like people to understand again how to get a hold of you, Arielle, and all that. Why don't you do that again?
Yes, SophiaVenus.com, and that's Sophia with a PH, SOPHIA Venus.com. And my East Coast schedule is already up there posted. I'll be in Boston, I'll be in Connecticut, I'll be in Wilmington, Delaware, 6 workshops during the Venus retrograde period. So I can't wait to meet some of you, because that's one area of the country I haven't really been to very much yet. I've just really been New York a lot doing the Venus work, but not any of these other states. So I'm excited.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think it's the timing. It couldn't be better for you, and your certain brand of astrology is right on the money there for that. So how fortunate is that? Probably no small accident either.
Great. Well, no, they wanted to time it to the Venus retrograde. That's why I'm coming during that time.
That's
so
absolutely perfect.
Hopefully it'll all work out.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, Arielle, thanks so much for coming on the show today. It's great to hear from you and talk to you about this, and it's exciting times. I think we have to be able to harness what is good in the world and make it a better place by doing things in optimistic ways. I think the idea of the passionate activist is the right way. We want to be contained and well-meaning in our passion, but I think being passionate is always good because it shows that there's motive. Yeah. So.
Right.
Very good. Well, thanks so much for coming on today. And again, SophiaVenus.com is her website. Arielle Guttman, she's the author of several books that are on there you'll be able to find, as well as other information about her tours and stuff like that. So thanks so much, Arielle, and we will be in touch, as they say.
Thank you, Chris. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Very good. Thank you.
You've been listening to Turning of the Wheel with your host, Chris Flisher. To schedule a reading with me or to order artwork, you may visit my website at www.turningofthewheel.com. That's www.turningofthewheel.com. Or you can call me at 978-393-1036. Thank you. And as always, be open to possibilities.